This is On the Flywheel, a podcast where each week we talk to entrepreneurs and professionals about the practical things they do to build and keep momentum in their personal and professional lives. Hello and welcome to On the Flywheel, Episode 9. I'm your host, Jonathan Mart of Flywheel Consulting, and today I'm privileged to have on the podcast Roxanne Alban of Applied Financial Services Incorporated. Got the name wrong the first time, but second time's the charm. So welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I always like to jump in and have guests just introduce themselves a little bit about what they do and kind of how they got to where they are today to give listeners a little bit of background for where they're coming from.
Okay. So, again, my name is Roxanne Alban, and I'm the owner of Applied Financial Services Incorporated. We are in our 7th year of business, heading towards 8 rapidly. And we provide professional financial management and bookkeeping services. So that's a whole slew of services from everything from bookkeeping, payroll processing, month-end close, financial statements, and much, much, much more.
That's awesome. So you've been in business almost 8 years. I assume there was some kind of moment that caused you to decide to start your own business.
Yes, I never actually thought I'd be self-employed. And I fell in love with helping more than one company at one time. I was working at a domestic violence organization and was also had some side clients, and we started selling off my services and really enjoyed helping multiple nonprofits and companies at the same time improve their practices.
Okay, so you had basically your experience was in bookkeeping, and then it kind of organically grew into helping other people while you had your initial full-time gig.
It was bookkeeping, and then at the domestic violence organization, I was a director, and so we started selling off my extra bandwidth to other nonprofits.
Oh, okay. So this was also a way to so the nonprofit isn't having to shoulder the burden of your entire salary, basically.
It was another way for them to get funds for unrestricted revenue.
Gotcha. That's really interesting. So I've heard you talk about that's also the inspiration, because you seem to have a focus partially in your business on nonprofit clients, and I assume that's kind of where that came out of.
I've always, ever since I was a kid, I've always have wanted to help nonprofits. I just find that there's so many missions that are so valuable, and I always say that I will not be able to touch every single mission that I would like to in my lifetime.
So it's a way of giving you some leverage, basically, for helping as many different kinds of causes as possible.
It's a way of having my hands in as many and helping clean them up.
So I'm really interested in your business. We haven't had a chance to talk very much about it. What are some of the pitfalls and the common issues that you see people have in their businesses when it comes to finances?
So one common problem is people relying on one person or one person that's not qualified to do what they call bookkeeping or accounting. If the person's not qualified, or if the company doesn't have access to their own information, which unfortunately is more often than you'd think.
When you say not access to their own information, you mean someone has the login to QuickBooks and the owner of the company doesn't?
Or the file.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Wow.
Yes.
I cannot imagine.
And there's some people that just will not share it, and it's just, to me, it's shocking, because it's part of the ownership of the organization. If they get audited, or if that person falls off the face of the earth, then the company still has to have those records.
Right.
So. Right.
I really couldn't imagine not having access to my own financials.
Right.
There's no way I would be okay with that. That's crazy. But I think, and maybe you can speak to this, I think people are a lot of small and medium-sized business owners are kind of intimidated by the financial side of their businesses sometimes. And so if they can just say, hey, you take care of it and I worry about what I'm good at and you just tell me how things are going, that's great.
True, and it's not. Unfortunately, it's not just with small business owners. I find it with executive directors. I find it with CEOs. I find it with all levels, where there's.
That's really surprising to me, especially if someone's giving themselves, or if they have the title of CEO. That's concerning, because you assume that's an organization of some reasonable size at that point?
Quite often when we start meeting with different directors or C-levels, they do not understand how to read the financial statements. And there's a lot of shame for a lot of people that they don't know what to ask, or they don't want to ask the question because they don't want to look like they don't want to show that they don't know the information.
Right.
That's one thing we do is we'll walk them through and we'll teach them how to read their financial statements or what we're seeing on them, because they're all, the financial statements are telling a story.
Right. So do you what was I going to so when you're helping folks through it, you're actually, it's not just about cleaning up the books, but it's also helping them understand their numbers then.
Absolutely. And it could be going through the financials with them on a monthly basis. We've had some clients where we work with them on quite a sizable, one client was probably about 80 hours a week of our services. And we'll have a lot more touch points at that point. But quite often we're reading and reviewing the financials together with our clients and making sure they understand them before they go to their boards, and so that they can best represent their company.
Wow. I'm just really struck by that, because I know on like lower levels there's lots of people that don't understand how to read a financial statement, don't understand the numbers in their business. I mean, I'd say that's probably one of the number one things I run into is people don't really understand how to approach numbers effectively in their business, right? But I'm really surprised to hear it once again at the higher levels of it. But it's so interesting dealing with the idea of shame that you're like, you should know it, but you don't know it. But because you feel like you're supposed to know it, you don't ask for help. Probably often till it's too late as well.
That whole cycle is really part of my job, where when we start with a client, there's a whole cycle that happens quite often where the highest level position will finally reach out to us, but they know that they've been having problems for a while, but they wait for a long time. Then there's some absolute cleanup that has to happen. And then the whomever I'm meeting with could get very emotional. It's not unusual for them to start crying in our second meeting and just...
So you're also a therapist.
It's like a confessional. I wish I knew this was something I should have looked at. And then it's this whole cycle. It's pretty empowering when you see them come through it.
Yeah, I was going to say it has to be very rewarding to help them help navigate that entire process and get things to a good place.
And get to the other side of it.
Yeah. So are you doing... you're providing like ongoing, not only just high level financial advice and understanding your numbers, but also like ongoing bookkeeping services, like to keep the books clean, right? On a go forward basis.
Absolutely.
Okay. So how often are you getting clients then most of the time that are having issues already? Do you ever get clients that already are like looking pretty good, or most of the time it's like you're being called because things are a mess?
Most of the time it's because there's a mess, or since COVID, a lot of it has been since they'll have a single bookkeeper and that person has retired, has not shared the information. So usually there's a problem involved. But sometimes they are clean. It's quite surprising when they are, and it's great.
That's awesome. So what's unique about you and your company? What do you think sets you guys apart from everyone else?
So we take the team approach. So we are a team of 9 currently. We always look to have capacity within our systems, and we work collectively. So it's if one of our people is out on vacation or 2 or whatever, if somebody doesn't return to work, there's always somebody else that can pick up the job where the client doesn't have to feel an absence. We have our own oversight within our organization, and we also have the separation of duties because we have enough people. So we have...
So you can help kind of maintain some level of controls then on behalf of your clients.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And often controls that they can't have or that they don't have with a single person.
Yeah. It's hard if you're not a big business to have enough people to have proper controls in place.
Absolutely.
Because yeah, I mean, you're going to have people doing the AP and the AR, and then,
the bank deposits.
Yeah, and do everything.
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting. In my family's business, like, my dad is still the one that goes to the bank every week and drops the money off, And so it's, and he signs every check, right? Still very check-based, which is, challenging at times, but it's a great control. If you have to look at every single check going out of your business, where your money's going, right? It's pretty hard to like pull one over on someone if they're the ones paying attention and signing and reviewing the backup with it every time. So I think I think that's really interesting, being able to provide like a whole team behind people and giving businesses like basically you're giving them a full accounting department without having to have the overhead of a full accounting department, plus probably a little bit of CFO as well. So I think that's great. What do you think? We've talked a little bit about it already. Or what do you think people get like wrong most often when they're dealing with their financials and stuff like that?
Not looking at their financials.
No, just not looking at all.
Yes.
Okay.
There's some clients that are used to, in their prior arrangement, would look at them once a year or wouldn't look at the financials. I can't stress enough, even for, mom and pop shop or an individual, to look at your financials on a monthly basis and to really ask questions, poke holes in it.
What do you guys so it has to be, you're dealing with people's finances in their companies. It has to be a very it's a very intimate look at someone's business. How do you navigate that dynamic?
It's building trust. And so I usually start off with those relationships, have the tough conversations, extract where the pain points of where they're really at, what needs to be cleaned up, what issues they're facing. We have a client right now who's undergoing a two-year audit. We've had
it's a long 2-year audit. That's
yes,
a long time.
We have another one. We had another one who was undergoing a massive sales tax audit.
Wow.
And they were digging into everything. And that one was about 2-3 year period.
Is this that a state level thing then for sales tax, or is that
yes.
Okay. So there's a California auditor coming in and getting all up in your business.
Yes. Well, we're used to dealing with audits because we do a lot of audit prep for our nonprofits.
Okay. So are you working closely with CPAs, or at least tax CPAs at least?
Very. We serve as the intermediary between our client and the CPA, and often we'll prepare the schedules, or we'll work through the whole entire list of what's required with our clients, assign tasks of who's going to do, if the client's going to do it, if we're going to do it, and we'll make sure every single document gets to the auditor.
Okay.
CPA.
Well, that's nice, because as someone who has helped deal with a few different kinds of audits in his life, it's great if you could farm that out to someone else, because it's not very much fun.
No, we thrive in that department.
That's good. It does make a difference anytime you're going through those kinds of things to have someone that's used to navigating the process, because being audited, whether of any kind, not just financial, is always intimidating if you've never gone through it before, because you don't know what to expect, and you feel like you're being interrogated by the police. Anything you say can and will be used against you. And
it's really important to provide what they ask for and nothing more.
There's an art to that.
There is an art to that.
Yeah.
And with the 501c3 audits, so for the nonprofit organizations, of making sure that they're supplying the exact information that's being requested, and I really try to stay within those parameters of what's being asked.
Not overshare. Yeah, that's dealing with an auditor 101, is only provide exactly what's required and no more and no less.
Exactly.
And if anything, err towards less, because you could always give them more, but once you give them too much, you can't take it back.
They can't unsee it.
I want to jump into a little bit of the kind of the things about in your personal life that you feel like make you successful. one question I like to ask people is, do you consider yourself a morning person or a night person?
Definitely a morning person.
Okay. Do you have anything in particular that you like to do as a part of kind of your morning routine to set yourself up for success for the day?
Yes. As you know, I have a farm, so I get to hear the roosters go off in the morning.
Oh, so you have nature's alarm clock then.
Yes, 3 of them that compete with each other.
Yeah.
And to set myself up for success, it often includes a self-care routine. I love my first cup of coffee in the morning, and then I go into a routine of meditation and prayer and doing some writing and really reflecting on what I want the day to be, really getting into calendaring and looking at what slots are available and mapping out what's most important to do throughout the day.
I think there's a couple things I want to jump into there that I think are interesting. One is coffee. How do you like your coffee? How do you prepare your coffee? And just out of curiosity.
I like it strong, and I like it with my creamer.
Fair enough.
My sugar-free creamer, but I like it strong.
Are you doing just a standard drip coffee in the morning?
Yeah.
My wife is Puerto Rican, and they make, and she's from Miami, and so they make Cuban coffee, which if you've never had it, is very strong and very sweet. So we'll have to find a way to get you some Cuban coffee sometime.
Definitely.
It sounds like it might be right up your alley.
Yes.
So the other thing I want to talk about is getting into the kind of journaling aspect of it. Are you journaling I'm assuming you're journaling because you said writing. That's my assumption. Is there a method to it, or is it just kind of a free write thing?
Free write.
Okay, and you just do you have any goals for how much you're writing, or it's just kind of like get stuff out of my brain and so I can kind of be fresh for the day?
It's mostly getting stuff out of my brain. Let's say if I'm waking up and I've been dealing with some stress, it's a great reliever to getting the stress down on paper. And often after I write, it's like taking the air out of the balloon.
Yeah. I find kind of just journaling like that, free writing, to be very cathartic and very clarifying myself, especially when there's a lot going on in my brain. Just like putting it on paper, it's like then especially if there's a problem or a tough choice I'm trying to work through, it's like the answer kind of just like jumps off the page after as I spend time, just like it's very clarifying.
And it's also, if I find that I'm really feeling overwhelmed, then I'll just free write a list of everything and I'll put it in different sections, from my personal, from business, farm. If there's certain things that absolutely must get done that are just nagging in my brain, I'll just write it down. And I find once I write something down, I'm much more likely to do it.
It sticks. Do you have any other kind of like task management or project management system, or is it pretty much just all write it down on a piece of paper, cross things off?
That in my calendar.
Okay.
I live by my calendar.
Okay. That was the other thing I wanted to jump into, because you talked about looking for slots and stuff. Do you time block, or what do you think is unique about your approach to managing your life in your calendar?
For me, it's really important to manage it by, I just did this last night, where I created a whole schedule of my recurring tasks, because I always am wondering, like, why does it feel like there's not enough time? When I put it all down on 1 week of everything that we need to do, from feeding to getting ready, feeding animals, to getting ready in the morning, to my morning practice. And it was quite shocking when I looked at it and saw how little white space is on the page. It's alarming.
Yeah, I think being honest, I think it's very clarifying to write everything down, especially when it comes everything that you have to do, especially recurring things, right? And then being also learning to be honest with yourself about how long things actually take. I think I know that this is a trap that I've gotten not as bad about now, but it's easy to fall into, is like over committing to things because you think you can squeeze everything in.
Absolutely.
And now when I get into that situation, or I'm looking at my calendar, I'm like, I know how I'm gonna feel on that day if I put this there, because it's gonna fail. it just won't work. I know it.
seeing it, and I put a bunch of color coding for different things for personal or work, recurring appointments, etc. And just seeing how little white space. So white space was anything that didn't have a particular recurring event in it. Was a real shocking look at how little wiggle room I have. So I'm always thinking that I have to remain so flexible. Well, I do have to remain flexible, yet if I move those things, it's just going to, bombard the rest of the schedule.
Yeah, that's...
Or cause a domino effect.
I think two things come to mind for me about that I think about. One is, it sounds like you're kind of doing, is time blocking, where you're creating, you're blocking off chunks of time for specific things, right? Obviously, it sounds like you're doing that a little bit more literally, and literally at this time of the day, I have to go, feed the animals or whatever, right? But I think the other thing is that's related to time blocking is making sure that you have, I got to imagine, making sure you have enough time to, like, think about your business, work on your business, have time to, like, be creative where you don't, or just get work done, get deep work done, not just, checking boxes, but actually being able to think and concentrate. Do you find time to schedule those things in as well?
With looking at the schedule that I created yesterday, I could see when I have available time, because I always want to make sure that I'm available to my employees to answer questions, or to clients if clients need to meet, of course. So definitely I could see when those best times would be for that to happen, for sure.
Yeah. So I think one interesting question is that I'd like to ask is, do you have a particular belief or behavior that you feel like had a major impact on your life?
Do I have a major belief?
Well, not necessarily major, but just a belief, like, a perspective on something that you feel like, maybe even in the context of your business or your approach to business, or maybe your business philosophy that you feel like helps make you successful.
I think one of the best things I could do is be a good listener, and that's to when someone's calling and they're having an issue, if someone's undergoing an audit and they're freaking out, if an employee is having an issue, if an employee is having a personal issue, that all is, to me, it's all relevant. If the client is feeling, lousy because they don't know the information, just to be able to reassure them and to listen to them of wherever they're at in the process, and to be able to be there as another human. I think a lot of businesses focus on business, which, great, okay, that's great for the bottom line, wonderful. Where's the human component? I mean, our employees are our largest asset, and they deserve to be cultivated and treated respectfully and, taken good care of.
Yeah, I think it is easy to lose sight of kind of the golden rule when you have people that work for you, is that, treat people how you want to be treated. If you were an employee, like, would you be telling them no about this particular thing, or that you can't do that, or would you be brushing that concern off if you were in their shoes? I think it's easy to become calloused a little bit when you're running a business. And so I think that's good to be, I like that it, that idea of making sure to taking the time to listen to people, because I think that's an experience I've had in the past where I've had to, with experience, got better at, but I had to catch myself at, was my gut reaction to what someone is telling me is to dismiss it and say that it's ridiculous. But regardless of if I think it's objectively ridiculous or not, it's impactful to that person. And so I need to take the time to listen and understand what their concern is, and help address it.
And I find that a lot of the case where people are so worried about, their employers knowing about their personal situations. Well, sure, there's a whole reason of why employers don't do that. But there's you could really help an employee walk through something. Maybe they need to take some time off because they're going through a divorce. Maybe they're having struggles with their newborn baby. Maybe whatever it is. But just being able to talk to them, or let them talk to you and tell you what's really going on, you can help them navigate through those situations.
You
better.
you find like sometimes people don't want to tell you things about what's going on in their personal life, even when clearly something is going on and affecting their work life?
Generally not with me. I'm pretty
Approachable?
I'm pretty approachable. My employees know that I want them to be able to talk to me so that I can help them navigate if that's what they need. So that's not my experience. I have heard that with others. So
Interesting. Yeah, I feel like that's one of those things where I always tell people I'd much rather you just come and talk to me about something, and I'm sorry if I didn't. And I think, that was definitely, I'm a person that is easy to come off a little bit intimidating because of my size and stuff like that. And when you're in a hurry and trying to get something done, people don't want to like stop you to talk all the time. But I was always, what I try and tell people is, hey, let's stop, and I'd much rather know what's going on and help figure this out with you.
Exactly.
Especially when it's a good employee that I'd like to keep. Like, we can be flexible, assuming it's within reason. But let's sit down and talk about it. I can't help you. I don't want you to come talk to me when it's already a disaster. Let's talk about it. Let's be proactive in that conversation.
Right.
So I think that's really a great kind of approach to working with people. So you're 8 years into your business. What are some of the challenges and struggles that you've overcome in those 8 years?
COVID. Hiring, having the right staff, finding people that want to work.
Bookkeeping. My understanding is that finding bookkeepers, because I assume that's kind of your primary rough kind of person you're looking for, is hard right now. A lot of people have retired and not a lot of people have replaced them, or the people that are there like know how to put numbers into the system, but they don't really understand what they're doing. Is that your experience?
Well, fortunately, a lot of our team has been there for over 3 years or so. And I do have to say, during COVID, it opened up my eyes to hiring remote. We all went remote, so hiring remote workers. And so we have one, our senior accountant, who's from Missouri.
Oh, really?
Oh, no, excuse me. Oh, that was a faux pas. Michigan.
From California, it's all the same.
Right. It starts with an M. It has an I.
Yeah.
Yes, but she's phenomenal.
So did you just post how'd you find that person all the way on the other side of the country?
Posted on Indeed and really interviewed people, listened for, just like when I have somebody sitting in front of me, I'm listening for their answers, I'm listening for their experience, checking their references, talking to their references, and asking specific questions about their capabilities. And she's a fabulous fit.
So how do you, I think lots of people have to be interested in that, because it is hard sometimes. Unemployment, not that it's generally low everywhere, but particularly here is very low. And so maybe that is the right fit for some people's businesses if they're struggling to find someone in the area, is to hire a remote person. How has that experience been, going from working in person to working remote, and what are some of the challenges you've had, and some of the good things that have come from it?
Well, we had a 3,000 square foot office. I loved it. It was great having everybody in the same location. Naturally, with COVID, that changed, and I found ourselves for quite a while with just two of us in the office, in a 3,000 square foot office, during COVID.
That's a lot of overhead with very little utilization.
Yes, and I believe I had just, right before COVID, renewed my copier lease and had this gargantua, copier. All the things that go into it. The overhead for running an office is insane. I find that, so how we deal with it is we have morning meetings, and we meet by Zoom. It's nice to be able to see everybody's face. There is an expectation to be there on time, and we share about, what we're working on, and we can have conversations. We can ask people how you're doing and things like that. So the benefits have been the massive drop in overhead expenses. Yeah.
And what are some of the challenges you've had in navigating? You're not bumping into people every day, so I assume you have to be much more intentional about, like you said, you have the morning meeting, and if there's anything else that you do to like check in with people, communicate. make sure you know what's going on, and also the aspect of like team building and camaraderie has to be, I would assume, is more difficult as well.
It can be. Some of the challenges have been people that we've hired that I think they were probably working more than one job at the same time, and not being where they're supposed to be. So, but you could see that. You could see the activity of when they're there, when they're not there, just by responsiveness. People that I really had high hopes for, but then all of a sudden they vanish.
Yeah,
It's
and
like
just can't get
missing
home.
for the whole day. you know?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I think it's interesting. So they're just, are you familiar with Reddit?
A little bit.
Yeah, so it's kind of, lack of a better term, it's an online forum, right, where people post about anything. And there is a part of Reddit where people call it being overemployed, and they brag about how many jobs they have.
Right.
And it's a very real thing.
Yeah.
Except some of these people are doing it at like tech companies. Like they'll have a job at Microsoft and Facebook, and they'll be making $500,000 or $600,000 a year between the two jobs. Crazy. And they get away with it. I at least the people on there say they're getting away with it. Now, do the people that get caught go on there and say I got caught? Probably not. But I couldn't imagine doing that. Especially if you're like fully engaged in, like, something's going wrong there. If one job is not enough to keep you engaged enough that you have time to go do a whole nother job, like something's going. Management of that company is off.
Right. Well, the staff that the people that we had hired that did this were definitely. I look at compensating fairly, of course, and giving benefits and giving everybody the benefit of the doubt. But they didn't have the time to be doing this, so they I think they took advantage of the whole situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, that's what it's all predicated on, is that you don't see me every day, you don't know what I'm doing. I can say I'm working,
Right.
and you can get. I mean, even if you get caught, you can probably get away with it for a while. You
Right.
know, especially it's not that hard to like fire people, and they make it. Bad employers have then made it difficult for good employers to be able to fire people when they need to fire them.
Right.
So I think we are getting close to the end of our conversation here. So I want to ask you, I just have a one little bonus question I want to ask is, if you could put one thing on the side of a billboard on like the side next to a freeway that you wanted just the world to know, general advice for the world, that you think would help people, what would it be?
Breathe.
Okay. Probably good if you're stuck in traffic too.
It's good in a lot of different situations. Just sometimes we just need to take a big deep breath. Maybe we're looking at a number that we're not happy with. We could take a deep breath and just look at, okay, this is a situation right now. What can I do about it? Let's move forward and put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we're just all taking ourselves or others far too seriously. And life is meant to be enjoyed, not endured.
That's another good one for the side of a billboard. I like that a lot. Life is meant to be enjoyed, not endured. Yeah, I think that's a good, man. If that is how you feel about your life, then you probably need to look at what you can change, because that's not a way to live for sure.
No, not a way I want to live. That's for sure.
Yeah. Do you think you mentioned that you meditate earlier? Do you think that's also kind of predicated on that practice as well, influenced by that?
It definitely helps me. I have a very active brain, active mind, and it really helps calm things down for me. It's very easy for me to fall out of the practice of doing it, but I use a free application, Insight Timer, and they have all sorts of guided meditations. I do one in the morning and one at night, and it's just a really nice way to start the day.
And to breathe.
After my coffee.
After the coffee. Caffeine and meditation. Well, Roxanne, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. Before we go, I'd like you, please plug anything you'd like to plug, website for your business, wherever you like. Where can people find you?
Okay, so our website is appliedfinancialservices with an S at the end.com.
Okay, awesome. I'm surprised that domain was available. So
Yes.
that's a good one.
Yes.
And you can find this podcast wherever in your podcast player or source of choice. Once again, I'm Jonathan Mart with Flywheel Consulting, and thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.